the boy at my door. Thanksgiving used to be the warmest day of the year for me, a day filled with noise, laughter, and the scent of spices drifting through a busy kitchen. But after my husband passed away 3 years ago, the holiday felt hollow. The house seemed too big, too quiet, and too cold. My daughter lived all the way in California now, and the roads were too icy for her to make the trip this time. So that Thanksgiving night, I sat at my dining table alone, picking at a small plate of turkey I made out of habit. No celebration, just silence. Around 8 p.m., a sudden knock echoed through the house. I froze. Nobody ever came this far down my dirt road. My nearest neighbor lived 5 miles away. Anyone driving out here had to either be lost or looking for something. I wiped my hands on my apron and approached the door cautiously. When I opened it, a boy, maybe 16, stood trembling on my porch. His clothes were dirty, thin, and poorly fitted, and his hair was matted like he'd been walking for miles. But what struck me most were his eyes. They didn't look frightened, even though his body shook in the cold. They looked distant, like his mind was somewhere far away. "Ma'am, do you have any food?" he asked softly. "I haven't eaten in days." His voice was flat but exhausted, and the way he held himself, arms loose, shoulders slumped, made me believe him. Despite the unease curling in my stomach, I stepped aside and let him in. It felt wrong to turn away someone who needed help. He followed me to the dining room, dragging his feet slightly, almost like he had to think about each step. I filled a plate with turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. He sat, staring at it like he was trying to remember what food even was. But instead of eating, he slowly pushed the food around the plate, barely lifting the fork. Every so often, he looked up at me with a small, unsettling smile, too wide, too still. "Is something wrong?" I asked gently. "If you'd like something else, I can." He shook his head. "It's overdone," he murmured. "The flavor gets ruined when people overcook." A strange comment for a starving teenager. And his tone was calm, too calm. A shiver ran down my spine. "I think maybe you should head into town," I said, standing up. "There's a small motel and a diner." He didn't argue. He just stood slowly, still staring at me with that fixed, unreadable expression. The house was so quiet that I became painfully aware of how alone we were. After what felt like minutes of silence, he finally turned and stepped outside. I locked the door immediately and checked every window. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. That night, sleep came slowly. But around 2 a.m., I shot awake to the sound of my chickens screaming. Coyotes sometimes slipped onto the property, so I grabbed a flashlight, pulled on my coat, and stepped out onto the porch. Cold wind brushed against my face as I scanned the dark yard. Feathers lay scattered in the grass, forming a trail leading toward the barn. But something about the scene made my skin crawl. Coyotes didn't usually leave such a strange, neat trail. My pulse raced as I followed the path cautiously. The barn door swung open, creaking. Inside, the air was still, except for a soft, low humming coming from the far corner. I raised the flashlight. Someone was crouched there. Someone small, rocking back and forth, humming an old tune I hadn't heard since childhood. My grandmother used to sing it during harvest season. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The rocking stopped abruptly. For a moment, everything froze, the humming, the rustling wind outside, even my own breath. Then the figure shifted slightly, turning just enough that I recognized the shape of his face. The boy from earlier. He slowly lifted his head, and even though the shadows hid most of his features, I could see his eyes, wide, unblinking, staring directly at me with an intensity that made my heartbeat slam in my ears. "Why are you here?" I whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he rose to his feet in one smooth, silent motion. That was enough for me. I backed away, nearly tripping, then turned and sprinted toward the house. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know if he was following. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and grabbed the phone with shaking hands. When the 911 operator answered, my voice barely worked. There's someone in my barn," I managed.
"A boy."
He came back. The operator said officers were on the way. And as I stood in my kitchen, every light blazing, clutching a kitchen knife I hoped I would need, I couldn't shake the feeling that the boy hadn't returned for food. He'd come back for something else. Something he'd been looking for. The thing that wasn't a boy. After the police left, the house felt even quieter than before, like their presence had been the only thing keeping the night from swallowing my farm whole. I kept every light on, every window locked, and sat at the edge of my couch with the knife still clutched tight. But the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched. I tried calling my daughter in California, but it went straight to voicemail. I didn't mention any details. I didn't want to worry her, just said I loved her and hoped she had a good Thanksgiving. When I hung up, the house creaked like something heavy was shifting somewhere inside its old wooden bones. Around 4 a.m., I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep on the couch. It didn't last. A loud thump hit the side of the house, so hard the windows rattled. I shot upright. The knife nearly slipped from my hand. At first I thought it was a fallen branch or maybe a stray deer. But the thump came again, slow, deliberate, like someone pushing their full weight against the wall. Then came the sound that froze me completely. A long, dragging slide across the siding, as if something was moving its hand, or something like a hand, along the outside of the house. Room by room. Searching. I turned off the lamp. My breath shook as I crept toward the window and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. Just darkness and rolling fog. Then, from somewhere outside in that fog-choked field, came the faintest humming. That same old harvest tune my grandmother used to sing. Except now it sounded off-key, slowed down like someone was trying to remember how it went. I stepped away from the window, terrified that if I looked too long, something would look back. The humming grew louder. Closer. It circled the house. I grabbed my phone and called 911 again. My voice trembled as I explained there was someone outside trying to scare me. The operator kept her voice calm, told me to stay inside, stay on the line, stay somewhere safe. But before the officers could arrive, the humming stopped. The air went dead silent. That somehow scared me more. Then, from behind me, came a soft tapping. I whipped around. The sound was coming from the back door. Slow, rhythmic, patient. Like someone using a single fingertip to tap the glass. I stepped closer, inch by inch. The tapping didn't grow louder, didn't speed up. It just waited for me. When I finally reached the kitchen, I stopped a few feet from the door. From the other side of the frosted glass, a shape appeared. A silhouette. Slim. Still. Too still. It was the outline of a teenage boy standing perfectly straight, shoulders relaxed, head tilted ever so slightly to the left in a way that looked unnatural, inhumanly calm. Then he started humming again. Not from the yard, not from the field, but from directly behind that door. My knife slipped slightly in my sweaty grip. "Leave," I managed to whisper. "Please leave." The humming stopped. The silhouette slowly raised one hand, then another, pressed both palms flat against the glass. Something about the way the fingers spread, the angle of the wrists, made every instinct in me scream that the shape on the other side wasn't standing naturally. It was posing, deliberately mimicking how a normal person would stand. Like it had watched humans but didn't quite understand how to be one. Then the back porch light flickered. Just once. When it came back on, the silhouette was gone. The glass was empty. Before I could even catch my breath, someone knocked on the front door, 3 sharp, urgent knocks. I almost screamed, but then a voice called out. "Sheriff's Department." Relief washed over me so fast, I nearly collapsed. 2 deputies entered and swept the property again. They checked the barn, the fields, the road, the tree lines. They found no footprints. No sign of anyone. Nothing disturbed except the feathers from earlier. One of them asked gently if I had trouble sleeping or if I'd been under stress lately. Another suggested maybe a coyote had pressed against the house or shadows in the fog had played tricks on me. I didn't argue. I just nodded. What else could I say? That something pretending to be a boy had followed me home? As their cruisers pulled away, their headlights faded into darkness, and I realized something. Morning was only an hour away. If I could just hold on until sunrise, I'd be okay. I had to be. But as I sat alone in that quiet kitchen, I kept thinking about one thing the deputies had said. If something was out here, ma'am, we'd have seen footprints. But they didn't. Because whatever I saw didn't leave any. What came back at dawn? I stayed awake the rest of the night, hands gripping that kitchen knife until my fingers ached. The house felt wrong, like the air itself was listening. Every small sound made me jump. The old refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, the wind brushing the siding. But none of that was what scared me. It was the silence between those sounds. Silence that felt intentional. When the first pale line of dawn slid across the horizon, relief washed through me. Morning always brought clarity. Morning always made nightmares feel small. Except this morning, nothing felt smaller. The fog had settled thicker than ever. I couldn't see the barn from the porch. Even the fence posts were swallowed by the haze. And then I noticed something else. The chickens weren't making a sound. Not even the usual morning clucks. My stomach tightened. I grabbed a coat and stepped onto the porch. The air was damp and heavy. Every breath came out cold. As I walked toward the barn, my boots made soft impressions in the dew-wet grass. But beside them, another trail. Shallow. Light. As if someone had walked there without any weight at all. The tracks led to the barn. I almost turned back. Almost ran. But something inside me needed to see for myself. Needed proof that what I saw last night hadn't been a dream or a trick of fear. The barn door hung crooked again. Exactly like before. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Not rot, just the damp, earthy scent of a barn that had been disturbed. Feathers still lay in a scattered path across the floor. But the 3 chickens the deputies had found were now arranged. Side by side. Neat. Almost carefully placed. Like someone had tidied up after themselves. A soft sound echoed overhead. A single, faint creak. I lifted my flashlight. Something shifted in the loft. Hello. My voice cracked in the cold air. Is someone up there? No answer. Just another creak, slow, deliberate. I took a step back. Then another. The loft boards groaned as if someone or something was walking across them. Then the humming began again. That same low, broken tune. Except now it wasn't coming from above. It was behind me. I spun around so fast the flashlight nearly slipped. And there, standing just inside the barn doorway, was a shape. Thin. Still. Head bowed slightly. Shoulders relaxed. Like a boy waiting to be noticed. For a breathless moment, neither of us moved. The figure wasn't distorted now. Not twisted. Not monstrous. No, it looked almost like an ordinary teenager. Except for the eyes. They were wrong. Too wide. Too bright. Too curious. Like they weren't made for a human face. He opened his mouth as if trying to speak, but instead of words, that eerie, broken humming slipped out again. I stumbled back. He tilted his head. Not to the left, but all the way. As if the muscles controlling his neck didn't obey normal rules. I bolted. I ran out of the barn, sprinting through the fog so thick it felt like I was pushing through water. My heart pounded in my ears. I didn't dare look back, didn't dare slow down until I reached the house. I slammed the door, locked it, then pushed the kitchen table against it. For a long time, there was nothing. No footsteps. No humming. No tapping on the glass. Silence. Then, soft as a sigh, came a single knock on the window behind me. My blood iced. I turned slowly. The boy stood outside the kitchen window. But he wasn't staring at me now. He was looking past me, over my shoulder, like someone or something was standing behind me. I froze. The house was empty, but the way he stared made it feel like it wasn't. Then his expression changed. He smiled. Not wide. Not unnatural. Just a small, almost peaceful smile. As if seeing whatever stood behind me had satisfied him. He tapped once on the glass. Then he stepped backward into the fog. With each step, his figure dissolved, like dawn was erasing him. like he was never supposed to be here in the first place. Within seconds, he was gone. I didn't move for nearly an hour. Later that morning, when I finally dared go outside, the dew-wet grass showed only one set of footprints. Mine. The boy had left no trace. No marks. No impressions. Nothing. Except on the porch railing something caught the light. A single feather, brown and white. And tucked beneath it, a scrap of my grandmother's old harvest hymn, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. 3 words were circled. He comes back. I moved out of that farmhouse the next week. But some nights, especially near Thanksgiving, I hear that broken humming just outside my window. Soft. Patient. Waiting.